Okay, second presenters, one Ahmad Faisal bin one Ahmad Kamal from Universiti Petronas. He'll be talking about the university and the captive mind. He's final year students.
Ya. Mulai.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good afternoon. I cannot promise whether I can complete in 10 minutes time because my topic is quite heavy with philosophy and other stuffs. But I'll try my best to convey the important messages to the audience in order for us to get something out from this session. The reason being I'm writing this paper is due to few reasons. According to Ibn Hazm al-Andalusi in Kitab al-Taqrib, Treatise in Logic, he has outlined few reasons why author writes something, and for me, my purpose is to tie in few important ideas from important scholars, and in my case, I will be using some ideas from the late Professor Syed Hussein Al-Attas and also his fellow brother Syed Najib Al-Attas and other fellow third world thinkers who critically analyze and examine the problems of our education system in higher education, higher institution. Next. Before I convey the important messages, we need to understand there must be some turning point that disrupt our education system in the past. And for that, from my understanding, I believe colonialism was one of the real turning point in our education system. But that was before we got independent. But after that, we also being colonized again in another form of colonialism, whereby you can see here from the images, cultural colonialism in terms of economic, political, and social. So we are still trapped in the mindset of captive mind from the Western-centric knowledge system. According to Antonio Gramsci, the Marxist thinker in Mussolini era, he was mentioning about hegemony in real life, whereby he said that the system's real strength lies not in the violence of the dominant class, nor in the coercive power of the state apparatus, but rather in the citizen acceptance of the worldview of those who rule them, which is a more softer kind of imposement of colonial power, which is through mind. And next. And Professor Syed Hussein Al-Attas has outlined a very profound criteria of captive mind syndrome that prevail in most third world countries among the students, among the lecturers. Some of those are this. A captive mind is uncreative and hence incapable of raising original problems. It is fragmented in outlook. It is unconscious of its own captivity and the conditioning factors making it what it is. It is not amenable to an adequate quantitative analysis, but it can be studied through empirical observation. So you can read my paper later on about the list of these captive mind criteria. And also, we need to study the captor mind, because without captor, there cannot be captive. So captor mind is the Western scholar or his Asian disciple. There are two kinds of captors who imparts knowledge through books or lectures of scientific thinking and reasoning. The main characteristic of the captor mind are that its presentation of the sciences is not contextual, philosophical, relational, and intercultural. The captor mind does not necessarily seek captivity consciously, but rather it is a somewhat unconscious instrument of a gigantic and imposing intellectual superstructure. I can say that in all universities in third world countries, including our university, is still being a captive-minded university in nature. If you go through the textbook, if you go through the lectures, the same kind of knowledge being imposed to the student, which is Western-centric in nature. We forget our roots of the past, how our forefathers deal with engineering and solving other problems in society. According Churchill, he's using a more profound notion of white studies to describe the compartmentalization of departments in universities, whereby we have all these psychology, philosophy, economics, all these departments being segregated against each other so that we cannot see the big picture of the problems that we have in our society. So the specialists in all all the departments cannot integrate their knowledge between themselves to solve the real problem outside the university. So this is what the church is trying to say. But if we look deeper into the problem, the root cause can be said as being explained by Professor Al-Attas as a secular and secularization process that happened in most of the modern countries in our world today. As being defined by Professor Al-Attas, secularization is the deliverance of man first from religious and then from metaphysical control over his reason and his language. This is a very, it's not a problem of the Muslim, it's also a problem for every religion who believe in metaphysical things like God, angels, and sin, and whatsoever. So in modern society, if you look at the Western society, last week we had a shock whereby a 13-year-old boy given a child in Britain, and they claim that our society is already broken down to pieces with this kind of incident. And it will happen to our society if we do not really understand the root cause of it. Okay, according to Prof. Al-Attas, he enlisted three main characteristics of secularism, secularization process, which is the disenchantment of nature, the desacralization of politics, and the consecration of values, relativism of values, whereby nobody is correct, nobody is wrong. It's up to you. This is relativism in values. So these are the basic problems of secularism. But and also, if we look deeper, Al-Attas has formulated a very profound concept of analysis in this problem, which is first, by secularism, the first thing that secularism attack is the language of the people by contaminating the key terms in respective languages. For example, in Bahasa Melayu, or in the past, in Al-Ghazali's time, the Muslim scholar time, there's a contamination in few important key terms like ilm, tawheed, and fiqh, jurisprudence, and everything. And at the end, due to this, there will be a confusion and error in knowledge. At the end, you will cause loss of adab, and from loss of adab means you are leveling everybody to the same level of as a leveler. And at the end, the rise of false leaders in every segment of societies, in universities, in politics, in household. So this will be a very problematic kind of problem, because it will be a vicious cycle. It will be continuous. If we do not stop the trend, it will be continuous. And based on this, we can also say that secularism do give a formulation that separate using divide and conquer devices in university. For example, we specialize our students, our lecturers into a very narrow kind of paradigm in academic life. Okay, next. And it will rise to kind of the problem we call dualism in nature, whereby we separate the important concept. For example, in Islam, we cannot separate fardu ain from the kifayah. It must be integrated as one form of knowledge. Well, if you use the next, Descartes' definition, whereby he separates mind and body, like most Westerners cannot integrate mind and body problem. So what we have today is a separation of emotion and reason, or revelation and reason. So there will be some conflicts in the society due to these kind of problems. And also from this, the product of our university will be some sort of one-dimensional man, as being explained by Herbert Marcuse, another Frankfurt School intellectual from Germany, which is explaining how we have become so narrow and rigid in nature in understanding our life. You just produce engineer, not human being, who understand how to live. So this is the problem that Marcuse tried to explain. Well, the remedy of this is we need to do the decolonization process, whereby we emphasize in the worldview construction, epistemological construction. In this current turmoil of economic crisis, we should be contemplating why it happened. And I believe so it has to do something with the problem of our knowledge system in economic and other fields. As you can see, the one who originated these kind of theories and everything is Adam Smith in capitalism kind of economy. And he is not an economist. He was a philosopher at first, which means whatever kind of things or theories he put forth in his book is actually a presumption or his kind of philosophical framework, which is if sometimes contradict to religious value and other metaphysical values. And due to this, we need to follow the example from the past. For example, Imam Al-Ghazali wrote this Mishkatul Anwar, The Niche of Light, a book which explained a concept of physics about light, but in a metaphysical manner. So this kind of books can never be given space in public universities to be taught in physics classes because it's not scientific in nature, according to our definition of scientific in modern days. So what I'm trying to say is we need to deconstruct the barrier or the understanding of the definition of science that really restricted to empirical manner. And decolonization process must be built upon the foundation of certain well-tensioned or worldview. Well, for Islam, for